Okay, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? All right, I think we're ready to get started here. So, hi everybody. All right, my name is Rob Garner. I'm actually a past president of DFWSEM from 2006 to 2008. Just a little bit of history here, real quick, about DFWSEM, the group that puts this event on. It started back in 2003. Bill Hartzer, Jim Gilbert made some phone calls to other SEOs and SEM professionals around the area, and about 12 of us got together. We met in a little hotel over in West Dallas and decided we might all benefit from a business association. So it kind of grew out of that, and a lot of people in that room that day became presidents of the group and fostered it. Christine Churchill, Bill, of course, Tony Wright, John Sanchez, Mark Jackson, many more. So DFWSEM is actually still the longest running local search business association in the world. The first one and still the longest running. So here we are. Pretty amazing that we're all in the room. I love every year that we do this. It's just another testimony to the starting of the group many years ago. So keep the fire going. So we'll get moving here. We are in, this room is sponsored by Idea Grove. Scott is the CEO of Idea Grove. Idea Grove is one of the top 25 tech PR firms in the U.S., a 3-time Inc. 5000 company, and an Inc. magazine Best Workplace in 2021 and 2022. And they're based in Dallas with clients worldwide. So if you got one of the bags coming in here, you got a book with it, and Scott's the guy who wrote it. So I always love getting to meet authors, and you know, there's so much effort that goes into a book like this. There's so much thinking, and Scott's going to go over some of the things in the book today, as well as some other things. But you have the book, thumb through it. You can talk to him today, ask questions at the end, or even find him throughout the rest of the day to ask questions. But again, a lot of brain power in this book, and take advantage of the author while he's here and ask him questions now and throughout the day. So with that, I'm going to introduce Scott to you right now, and he'll tell you more about himself. Thank you, Scott. Let's give him a big round of applause.
I think I'm pretty easy. I think I'm good. Really excited to be here. This is my third time speaking at State of Search. He mentioned Bill Hartzer. Bill is the person who introduced me to DFWSEM years ago. He's a good friend who's, gosh, whenever I have a huge SEO mess I can't figure out, I always call Bill, and he settles me down and figures it out for me. I am a little different from most of the folks here because I didn't come from a SEO background. That's now digital marketing is not where I entered the picture. I came from journalism, and then as a writer, and then PR and branding. SEO is how I grew the business. Idea Grove is mostly grown from organic search, but because I kind of came in through the back door, I think I approach a lot of these SEO questions, organic search questions, kind of from a little different perspective than a lot of people that I meet who kind of just are really fascinated about search and link building and kind of all the technical aspects of you know, getting their clients and getting companies more visible. Those things are really important to me, but I come from it from a kind of a different angle in branding, and I thought sharing some of my thoughts on branding and how we're doing it now, and how I think other companies maybe are moving in this direction also, could give you a sense of how, at least from my perspective, branding affects what all of us do in digital marketing. So I call it a 3-dimensional brand. I'll explain what that means in a minute. First, I'll say, look, this is a small group, and I hate just kind of talking like a monologue forever. So I strongly prefer interruptions. Some people don't like it, but I like it. So I don't mind stopping all along the way. I know personally, if I come up with a question, I have forgotten about it by the end. You know, I was like, what was I going to ask him? It was 10 minutes in, you know. So don't wait, just ask. So the book is called Trust Signals, Brand Building in a Post-Truth World. And hopefully everyone's gotten their copy. It was part of our. I was going to speak here, and then when the book coming out, Chris said, "Hey, why don't we make that your sponsorship, and we can put a book in all the bags?" And I said, "Absolutely! I'm really excited about it, and excited to get feedback on it. I know we've gotten on the Trust Signal site, some folks here have subscribed to it and stuff. So, I'm just dying to. This book just came out last week. I've worked on it for 3 years, basically, while trying to run Idea Growth, but getting a lot of help doing that. But I relish just talking about it, and it's okay if the talk is this is crap, I don't agree, or whatever. Just as long as someone has read it and responds, it really makes me feel good that I'm engaging with someone about it. So I talk about trust signals. Now, trust signals have been around as a term of art in e-commerce for like 25 years, and in SEO separately, trust signals related to ranking signals has been discussed in the literature for a decade plus. But when I talk about a trust signal, what I mean is evidence points that inspire confidence in your brand online. So it's a more general term that inclusive of those kinds of trust signals, like a Norton security seal. That's a trust signal. Better Business Bureau seal. That's a trust signal. Some would say domain age is a trust signal, although Google will deny that. While when you do about this result, it'll say this domain is this years old, so maybe it actually is a trust signal. These are all examples of trust signals, but more broadly, if you think about it more broadly, it's a great way to kind of tie all the disciplines in PR and marketing together, which is really the goal of this book. So when we talk about trust signals, and you look at this slide, what's the trust signal on this slide? All right. Well, actually, the explaining trust signals. This is a lighthouse is a symbol of that because, thousands of years ago, if you go to the Pharaohs of Alexandria in Egypt, one of the 7 great, ancient wonders of the world, the idea was that this was protecting sailors, guiding them home, and so trust signals are meant to guide people towards a decision or in a direction in that same way. So this is a symbol of trust signals. This is an actual online example of an online trust signal, a bestseller sticker. So as an author that is not, Seth Godin, I'm not exactly famous, I need to do things to make you think or hopefully come to the conclusion that this book is worth your time to read or spending money on it. So how do I do that? So, you could just put the book out there and hope that it becomes a bestseller, even though nobody knows who you are. Or you can do things like take advantage of a special deal that first week, ask your friends to leave a review, group some activities to secure Amazon bestseller status, understand how the rules work for Amazon bestseller status. All of that allowed us to achieve Amazon bestseller status on the first day. And we had it all the first week. And we can, of course, use that sticker forever because of it. That's an example of a trust signal. Others for a book would be having a biography that shows expertise on the book jacket. The book blurbs that you hopefully are by people who are more famous than you. So if you don't know who I am, maybe you know who somebody is who leaves a quote in the book. Getting 5-star reviews on Amazon, and the more the better. Getting people on social media in your space to say good things about your book. Getting some media coverage, getting on some podcasts that your audience listens to. These are all examples of trust signals that you can see they're across different things, review sites, on the book, in social media, in the news media. These are all forms of third-party validation that together, hopefully, help you come to the conclusion that this book is worth a try. So when I talk about trust signals, and in the book, on the website, which led to the book, there's over 100 different trust signals that we discuss and go through. But to give you some examples, I divide them in 3 basic categories: website trust signals, inbound trust signals, and SEO trust signals, or hidden SEO trust signals. So when we talk about website trust signals, it's things like site speed. if your page loads slowly, maybe I think your customer service is probably slow too. Or if your content isn't updated very frequently, maybe I think your product roadmap isn't updated very frequently. If you have stock photos on as your main image on your website, on your homepage, as opposed to custom photography, maybe I think you're just like everybody else, as opposed to having a distinct identity. These are all examples of trust signals or signals of distrust based on how you use them. This is on your website. And of course, classic trust seals. Better Business Bureau, Norton, PayPal, payment trust seals to show, hey, we accept all major credit cards. These are all things that make someone more comfortable working with you, doing a transaction on your website. Now, when you get off the website into the wild, what I call inbound trust signals are all the different, you could relate it to inbound marketing, all the different points of evidence you see online that would drive you to your website. So an article about you in the New York Times, maybe you've got a byline by your CEO in a trade journal, endorsements by influencers on social media, reviews on Google reviews, which is about half of all reviews, I think, today, or reviews in your industry, a Wikipedia page, high ranking for industry keywords, or for some brands, just ranking #1 for your brand name. These are all examples of things that when people see them, it makes them more likely to trust you and either research you more or come to your website. Now, all of these, for those of you in the SEO business, you know that things like fast page loading, media coverage, all these things are things that Google looks at too. So I categorize a special group of SEO trust signals here that are the ones that people don't see but Google does, like your reputation history of your website. If you've been penalized before, you're going to have to overcome that to earn back Google's trust. That's going to affect how visible you are. You can have a great website, but if Google doesn't trust you, it's just like having a fancy restaurant in a bad neighborhood. So you have to earn Google's trust too in ways that visitors don't see. Obviously, through analytics, they can see and increasingly are ranking you based on engagement in searches to your site. Are people searching for you? Are they searching with your brand in association with an industry keyword? These are all examples of, and of course, the #1 is backlink quality and quantity. And these are all examples of SEO trust signals that people don't see, but are really incredibly important because Google is the ultimate arbiter of trust today. Google is not only obviously the biggest search engine, but they're the biggest, the most important media company in the world. That's what I tell people on the PR side. Don't think of Google as a search engine. They're a more important media company than the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, or take your pick. They're the most important media company in the world, even though they don't create their own content because they control who sees it and where it appears. So those are trust signals. Connecting the dots is once you've identified, what I like about this formula is working in PR, I felt like we are also a HubSpot partner. We've been a HubSpot partner for 10 years. And from the beginning, when Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah wrote their book, Inbound Marketing, and they coined the term, they left PR out of it entirely. I'm like, wait a minute. Why is that? All of these different points of evidence serve the same purpose once you start thinking about the similarities rather than the differences. And so, for example, I talk about rather than the funnel, because there's not a clean funnel. It's not like you're following a mouse through a maze to a piece of cheese. That's not how it works today. I describe it as a breadcrumb path, like calling out Hansel and Gretel, but a breadcrumb path where is different from each individual. And you're laying out trust signals to establish breadcrumb paths that individuals that you're trying to reach can find to eventually come find you. So an example would be just from my own agency, Lori Lane, who's one of our PR managers, she had a baby recently. She and her husband had a baby. When they were getting their baby's room ready, obviously it's their first baby. They wanted to do it up. They went over budget. They're like, okay, crib mattress, we got to buy one. Let's buy the cheapest one possible. So they were going to find the cheapest crib mattress they could. Then Lori thought about an Instagram creator that she followed who had told her, don't get a toxic crib mattress. Get a non-toxic crib mattress, organic, safe, natural. It'll protect your baby. She thought of that, and then, like any mother or soon-to-be mother, worries, right? So she said, wait a minute. So she said, she did a Google search. She couldn't remember the name of the mattress this creator had mentioned. Did a Google search, and in the top 3 results, that brand of mattress appeared. She recognized it once she saw it. She would have never thought of it if it had been on page 2 of Google results. But because it was in page 3, in combination with that earlier callback, the creator, then she made the connection. That's a trust signal to a trust signal for me, a breadcrumb path, right? Then after that, she said, well, let me look up reviews. Hundreds of reviews, 4 and 5 stars. Okay, that's all good. More third-party validation. So then she says, I'm going to go to the website. And on the website, there's good content that really relates to her. She establishes some sense of rapport and connection with the content, which is a trust signal also, having that kind of content that understands your audience. Then she sees a seal from an organization that vouches for this is 100% natural, organic, safe, non-toxic crib mattress. She's sold. Then she's ready to buy. She's on the website and she's ready to buy. That's a breadcrumb path. What you often hear in inbound marketing is this idea that's almost like a very insular idea, like, okay, I saw, here's how it went. Top of the funnel, I read your blog post, I subscribed to your newsletter, you sent me an email with a demo, I did the demo, then I came to your website and signed up. However many steps, often when you hear these funnel discussions, that's all owned media. It's all a world that I control, and I took you top of the funnel, mid funnel, bottom of the funnel, and closed you. Well, that's not how the world works, especially today. People aren't, do you know that 70% of people that search you for your brand by name don't go to your website? They go somewhere else. They search for you by name, but they go to another website. So they'd rather find out about you, and they think it's more trustworthy information if they find it somewhere else. There's actually, in B2B tech, has anyone heard of this website called Featured Customers? It's funny. It's a kind of this geeky little site in B2B tech, but it's an amazing business model. I wish I had thought of it. So this has been around for a few years now. This guy in Florida. So what he did, all these review sites have sprung up. Obviously, G2 has raised $300 million, right? And there's review sites across every space now. You can get reviews for, vegan ice cream now. You can get reviews for anything you want online. G2 is huge in technology. But what this guy did is he said, I don't want to go to the trouble of building a review site. I'm just going to scrape case studies and testimonials from tech company sites and put them on my site, word for word. And I'm going to aggregate the star ratings of all of the different review sites, and I'm going to add it all up. So when you see my site, it's going to say, I have 48 reviews for your brand because I aggregated all the others. And so you go there and you think, oh, wow, this is a review site. There's a star ratings, but you're actually reading the content that's coming directly from that company's website on their client pages and stuff. Here's the funny part. They make all their money from brands paying sponsorship fees to featured customers to display their content. All right? So, because they know that the same content on your website is considered more trustworthy when it's on somebody else's website. That's the importance. That's it. Goes to extreme example of how important third-party validation is. So, all that's a setup to talk about three-dimensional brands, because three-dimensional brands have a much easier time using trust signals to build brand trust online. So that's what we're going to talk about. So in digital marketing, particularly those who are more on the lead generation side, your thought might be, hey, I'm looking for leads, branding, I don't have time for that. Why does it matter? I don't know if you've ever seen this cartoon. It's one of my favorites, but The person trying to sell brand building has no one in line to buy it. But even though these leads are low quality leads, the line goes a mile long. The reason is that brand building is hard. It's hard to measure. It takes time. But the thing is, if you don't establish the brand first, you're doomed to get low quality leads because they don't know you. They're just filling out a form or something. It's like those crappy leads you get at trade shows or through a lot of email campaigns, or for some, you had some sexy piece of content out there and you captured, but the person they don't know you. So, what we talk about, so we are very specific at my agency when we talk to clients that we are not a lead generation firm. We call lead generation kind of if you think about shipping and logistics, we call it a last mile service. What we try to do in the branding side is through branding and communications of that brand messaging, build brand trust. This is a concept I borrowed from Branding Strategy Insider. But the idea is, if you can establish brand trust, it's not a lead generation. It's not lead generation, but it removes friction at every stage of the funnel. It takes longer if you haven't established that trust, if you haven't established that awareness. And it has to be trust and not just awareness, because you can establish awareness by figuring out your target audience and following them all around the internet with targeted ads, right? So they'll know. It's a cheaper way than PR, for example, to get someone to know your name. They'll hate you, but they'll know your name, because no one wants to be followed around like that randomly, right? They want something personalized and something they already care about, which goes back to branding. So how do you create a company or brand or product that people do care about? That's where we get to three-dimensional branding. This kind of superhero picture of Jeff Bezos here. A brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. I have a famous quote by Jeff. We think of brands as having human-like qualities. We talk about brand personalities, for example. But if you think about it, a corporation is really just a set of legal documents somewhere. There's nothing about it that has any permanence inherently. The founder can leave anytime. Shareholders can buy and sell stock. Employees can leave at any time. So when you talk about a company or a brand, there's no there. What is it? All it is, ultimately, is the continuity that we give it through branding. So brand is when we create human-like qualities that pass from shareholder to shareholder and transaction to transaction. So many companies, when they talk about branding, are thinking about fancy logos and we're going to inspire people, all these things. But fundamentally, the purpose of branding is to establish continuity by kind of creating a human-like entity that you commit to staying with, because it increases in value over time the more you're consistent with it. So for example, if you look at the S&P 500, there are literally hundreds of billions of dollars on those balance sheets that are on the goodwill line. If you know what the goodwill line speaks to brand equity. Those are from acquisitions that companies made of smaller companies, and they paid more than the book value of the company purely because the brand value that had been established over time. That's how important and how valuable financially building a brand is. So the more human your brand is, the more people will connect to it and trust you. We trust people, we don't trust things. A one-dimensional brand, which many brands are, in some industries more than others, is one that's solely focused on the product or service. So it's like that person at the party that's always talking about themselves. Eventually, you're going to go to the bar. You're going to go somewhere else. You can't take that forever, right? A three-dimensional brand is more human-like, because in addition to having that, you can equate the product to the body. There's also a mind and a heart. Thought leadership represents the brand's mind. Social purpose represents the brand heart. If you think about this in terms of a person again at a party, what if instead of just talking about themselves, that person actually had some interesting ideas to share? You're in the same industry, for example, you're talking about ideas that you're like, wow, that's a really good point. Or they're actually doing things to help a neighbor, or they're doing things in the community that shows they care, that they have a heart. You might talk to them all night. They might become your best friend. You're probably going to trust them to go out to lunch with them, maybe do business with them, whatever, because a real relationship has been established that wasn't just me, right? And talking about your product to the exclusion of other things is the equivalent of someone who's talking about me, especially today. So I don't think any brand story is complete if it's product only today. When I started doing branding 15 years ago, I would start the sessions by saying, what do you do? And it'd be kind of a gotcha, because it'd be like, well, of course, blah, blah, blah. But I work in B2B tech. So it'd be like, well, titanium, it'd be, and it'd be like, stop. That's not going to convince anybody. Can you really, in a few words, summarize what you do, and can we make it distinct or differentiated from your competitors? That's what I used to do. I don't start branding sessions that way anymore. I start them by asking, why do you exist? And that really gets them, because maybe when they first started the company, if it's the founder, they had that reason. And the reason was never to make a bunch of money. And the reason was never to sell a bunch of widgets. There was something more there that often gets lost along the way, which is a higher purpose beyond selling. And believe me, and you guys know this, employees want to work at a place that has a purpose beyond just selling stuff. And that's true for customers today more than ever. And I would point out that having that kind of brand that has that humanity to it, and has a purpose, is not only helps you grow that brand and sell more and so forth, it also protects it. If someone attacks it on social media, you'll have your defenders. If there's a cancellation attempt, or there's a conspiracy theory or something that involves you, you'll be more likely to be given the benefit of the doubt. It's like a story. There's a story that of a true story. Woman who used to work at a newspaper that I worked at many years ago. She had just started. She was hired. She was going to start the next Monday. She came to a party on a Friday night, and she's just meeting all these people for the first time from the newspaper. She was obviously probably a little nervous, drank too much liquid courage, ended up doing something that was very memorable, unfortunately, to everyone there, which was mistaking the laundry room for the bathroom and the dryer for the toilet. And so what happened was she didn't come in on Monday, and she never came in. That's how devastating a mistake can be with no context. What if, on the other hand, this had been someone who had been an editor who worked at the paper for 10 years, and she had always been a great worker, great friend, great employee, never had problems with alcohol. She'd have come in Monday, people might have given her a hard time. Maybe her editor would have said, is everything okay at home, or can I help you with anything? But she would have come in because she had that context. That's what you want to do as a brand, as a three-dimensional brand, is establish that context, so the first people hear about you isn't when something bad happens. So I'm going really slow, or I'm saying too many things. I've got till 20 minutes? I want to give you time for questions. So let me see if I can get through this pretty quickly. The concept's fairly straightforward. When we talk about thought leadership, a lot of people think of it as, this is top of the funnel stuff. But it has a more important purpose. The purpose is to show that you have ideas and value to share freely. That's really what it's about. The sales benefit is secondary. That speaks to your reputation. Let me give you a quick example. There's a movie. Has anyone seen this movie called The Tao of Steve? It's kind of an old movie now. It was a big Sundance winner a few years ago. The idea of the movie was, it's this slovenly, kind of sloppy, kind of obese guy who's a kindergarten teacher, and somehow he has all this luck with women. And his friends are so jealous, and they don't know how this is happening. And so he tells them his secret. He has a three-step secret, a three-step process. He calls it the Tao of Steve, named after the old 70s movie star Steve McQueen. Number one, be desireless, meaning maybe you think it's a pretty girl or someone you'd like to date, but when you approach them from the perspective of getting to know them on a real level, on a level that is separate from any desire you may have beyond getting to know them as a person, sharing interests, and so forth. So but not faking it, truly finding a place to be able to have that interaction in a way where you're desireless. The second is to be excellent, meaning if you want to be someone that person remembers later or would like to go on a date with, do something that stands out. Be excellent. If it's juggling, juggle. If she seems to have an interest in art history and you not know a lot about art history, talk about your art history. Impress the person with something that stands out. The third part of the methodology is be gone. As Dex, who's the character in the movie, puts it, we pursue that which retreats from us. And so the point is, if you've done those things right, but then you harass the person afterwards, it's like that white paper that's supposed to be this big overview of the industry, and then at the end it says, and the solution is buy our product. The moral of the story is buy our product. You've just undercut all your credibility by ending it that way. So when I saw this movie again recently, I thought, well, that's exactly how thought leadership should work. When you put out the content and your ideas, it has to be done within a context of desirelessness. There can't be a clear, obvious ulterior motive to it. There has to be a true, authentic purpose. And then there's so much content out there. There's a study recently that showed 80% of B2B decision makers read thought leadership content every week. 15% think it's good. That's a true study from Edelman and LinkedIn. All right. So make the content good. The best way to do that is by understanding who your buyer is and connecting to them in an authentic way, as opposed to kind of Me Too content. And then be gone is don't push it. You got their contact information, that's fine. You know what? In a lot of businesses, like all the businesses that our clients are in, 5% of buyers are in market at any one time. So I've established that impression. We pursue that which retreats from us. I've made the impression. When they're ready, I'll put enough breadcrumbs out there that they can find me, like Lori, my manager, found the crib mattress. But if I harass them, I will have defeated the purpose. There's no reason to do it if you're going to do it that way. I'll skip this study. Edelman is a great example of a company that does thought leadership well. Has anyone ever heard of the Edelman Trust Barometer? So it's a study where they do every year. They survey 30,000 people, and they come out with incredible insights that are shared in the media everywhere on where the state of trust in institutions like government, media, the police, business, and it's an incredible resource. And they've grown a huge business around it. Like they've got a trust institute, they got a trust management practice, and all these things. But what I thought was interesting is that the same week that the last one came out, there was this kind of potential scandal that came out about how Edelman was representing fossil fuels companies after putting out this big statement about how they wouldn't do anything that contradicted their support of climate change policy. But within this larger context of how trusted, I got 5 minutes, how trusted they were, that was a blip in the news. It could have been a big story. I think it would have been without this context. So the bottom line is thought leadership really helps you beyond being top of the funnel sales material. It's something that shows that you have something to say beyond talking about yourself. Social purpose, I think people have a sense of what social purpose is. It's fusing your company's product offering with a larger vision to create a better world. People want brands to have values today. The top 3 reasons that people purchase today, according to multiple studies, are price, quality of product, and shared values. And if you've got these other 2, you're probably going to have a little higher price, right? If the values align and if the quality is good. that's that kind of alignment that you want to have that goes beyond the product itself. I'll give you an example of Lego. Lego is an $8 billion company that sells little plastic bricks, right? That could be a commodity. It's anything but that, right? And they invest their story in the product itself by associating it with creativity and with helping children, nurturing children with toys that inspire creativity. It's not junk like, playing a video game, right? But they do more than that. They extend this idea of their purpose being nurturing children. They tie that to their sustainability initiatives, their online safety initiatives, their DEI programs. If you read their website, if you read their narratives, it all feels like one thing. That makes it so much more powerful than saying, we sell widgets during the week and we do Habitat Humanity on the weekends. Those just sound like, oh, you make all this money and then you try to pretend you're nice on the weekends. If it all feels like one clear, consistent narrative, it's much more powerful. If you go back to the beginning, we were talking about Jeff Bezos and what a brand is. The key feature of a brand is consistency. It has to start with that. If it's not consistent, it's not a brand. So Harris poll says 82% of consumers want to buy from brands that align with their values. And on the flip side, 73% of respondents in a Porter Novelli survey say they were less likely to cancel a purpose-driven brand. So you can see why going beyond the product to talk about ideas and talk about caring can be so valuable. So final point about one-dimensional brands is that they're boring, right? If you're trying to lay out trust signals everywhere and all you've got to talk about is yourself, you're just being boring everywhere, all right? If your influencer on social media are talking about cool stuff you're doing in the community, or Forbes is publishing thought leadership content with your ideas about the industry, you're going to have or pitching the media. Good luck pitching the media about the latest version of your product. They're not going to cover it. But if you can pitch a larger trend that your product relates to, they might cover that. So that's how. That's when I say a three-dimensional brand makes it so much easier to establish trust signals online and to lay this breadcrumb trail of trust. So anyway, I've gone to 11:48. I'll stop now for any questions. It's been fun talking about this stuff. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
Out of all the trust signals out there, what do you think is the one that is
Well, I think that we know that review sites are very powerful, right? Reviews are very powerful today. I mean, we're in the Google business, most of us here, right? So we know for, 70%, some majority of all searches have local intent, or Google assumes that. The first thing that comes up is the map listing with reviews right there. This Google 3-pack. They better be good reviews, right? So I think in terms of immediacy, impact, eyeballs on it, it's hard to top that. I mean, over 50% of all reviews online are Google reviews.
I feel like reviews too, like that transcends every single industry. Like whether it's a movie, a video game, a place to live, a place to eat, you're always going to look at those reviews.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very few people will buy anything without looking at reviews now. And people will say, and it's true, and there's actually logic to it. It's not just the shock value, that they trust reviews more than their family and friends. Why do they trust reviews online more than their family and friends? Because they can find a use case specific to them. Their family, what do they say? Oh yeah, I've seen that car, it looks pretty good, or whatever. You can find someone who's like, yes, I use this vehicle for this purpose and I drive this many miles on it. Whatever the product is, if there's enough reviews about it, you can find an example that speaks to you in a way that just because you know someone doesn't. It's like remote work today. We hire now from people who might be anywhere because we want the best person. Proximity does not associate necessarily with quality, right? So just because they're your friends and family doesn't mean they're the best resources. You trust them, hopefully, but there are other ways to establish that reviews are trustworthy, which is why fake reviews are such an issue that Amazon, Google, and all these folks are working so hard to stamp out, because when that credibility is undermined, that's a serious business issue for them.
One quick question for you.
Yeah.
How
how important is it to bring reviews into your brand space on a website versus being off the site?
Yeah, I've done a fair amount of research in that. It's pretty interesting. If you've heard of first-party reviews, that's when you could actually allow people to leave their review on your site. And that's opposed to embedded reviews, which a lot of reviews allow you to pull directly from the third-party site onto yours. Embedded reviews, there's a group that's really fascinating out of Denmark called Baymert Institute. That they've done 90,000 hours of UX research on questions like this. Embedded reviews are considered far more trustworthy than first-party reviews. The only thing that'll make a first-party review considered as trustworthy is if you prominently display negative reviews. If you as a brand are willing to prominently display your negative reviews on your own site, that builds trust. If it's all 5-star reviews and it's your controlled environment, then it's not trusted at all. Don't even do it. You want to encourage people. Can anyone leave a 1-star review? It would help me. It's the truth. Whereas an embedded review has inherent trust because you're directly pulling it from a third-party site. So yes, people, you want to pull that. And of course, there's the whole issue of review gating. So you have to be very careful not to hand select only positive reviews when you embed. Most of the tools like Birdeye don't allow that anymore because that's against Google's policies. And in fact, the FTC last year or earlier this year fined a company $4 million for doing that, for selectively, the company was Fashion Nova?
Yes, Fashion.
Yeah, for selectively not displaying negative reviews that had been left as first-party reviews on its site. So it's gotten the government's attention simply because review sites have become so powerful.
What was the name of the company?
Fashion Nova.
Fashion Nova.
I think it's 2 words. And that's the first time that's ever happened, but probably won't be the last.
You mentioned a stat, and I misunderstood. That's when I asked something around 30% of persons are not going to go to your website. Are you talking about zero-click search results when you were giving that number, as far as they wouldn't go to your property before they make a decision, or what was that?
If you look, you'll see it's different for every company and every branded search. But if you look at your branded searches in Google Search Console, you'll see that there's a lot more people that search for your brand, which you might rank number 1 for, than actually click through to your brand. So maybe I've searched for your brand, but then I look at that Google business profile and I find that more interesting. Or I skip past your site because you're just going to be talking about how great you are, and I go to step below to your Glassdoor reviews where your employees say you're terrible, or the one below that, which is the most prominent review site in your space. That's what people believe more today. You have to establish credibilities through third parties before they're going to really pay much attention to what you say about yourself.
Any other questions? One other question was dovetailing off this first one. So if there's a sort of a quick thing, let's just say reviews are one thing. I wouldn't say it's easy, but there's a lot to it. What are sort of maybe some medium level effort branding considerations and then long-term effort branding considerations for anybody here who might actually be promoting their own business or a small client business, small medium-sized business?
Well, personally, I know from being in PR and doing media relations stuff that's gotten harder and harder and harder. That is high effort. It used to be so much easier because there's so few reporters now covering stuff. The audiences are fragmented. So many things make it hard. So when I find something easy in that space, I gravitate to it. So if you've heard of Forbes Councils, Fast Company Executive Board, there's a group called the Community Company that works with these media brands to create sponsored content that doesn't look like sponsored content. It just looks like, this is a membership organization that this person was qualified to be in. That's a trust signal. And then they have access to be able to write byline articles in Forbes, in Fast Company, in Newsweek, in Rolling Stone, in Dallas Business Journal. And for the most part, these appear in Google News. They appear in LinkedIn, mentioned in the news. Your contact was in the news, just like any other news placement. That is a guaranteed placement that is completely above board, I'm not a fan of some of the under the table payments and things that are against Google's policy. You don't need to do those things to have success. But that's something I would encourage folks to look in. A Forbes membership, Fast Company membership, $2,000 a year. And the best one might be Entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is $1,000 a year. Sometimes they put you on hold. If you apply, they won't let you in right away because I guess they can only service so many people at a time. And I've had stuff. I think I have something on their homepage that they liked it for some reason. It's been sitting there for like 2 months. Near the bottom of their homepage, something about ways to a perfect pitch or something. It was, look at it and see if you can tell it's sponsored content. You can't. These media companies need money. They need money. They need it. And they're trying to walk that line between how do I maintain what's my most valuable asset, which is my credibility as a brand, with earning the revenues I need to maintain the staff and to continue. It's a constant balancing act. But if you put too much of an advertorial thing on all of it, no one's going to go to it, no one's going to use it, and then no one will pay for it. So this is a balancing act that all these media outlets are doing. My point of view is I'm going to follow the media outlets rules, and if what Entrepreneur does, if your content is good enough, they're going to give it more play. It'll keep it on the homepage. If it's crap, it may never appear on the homepage, and it'll be in the bowels of the Entrepreneur website. So you have a lot of control over the visibility based on the quality, but the visitors to the site don't necessarily know it's a paid access program. But without the paid access, you could spend months banging your head against the wall to try to get some staff writer at Entrepreneur to pay attention to you. So go the easier route.
I have one quick question. Brand searches. Just a quick poll here, everybody. When you work with your clients or in-house, how many of you report regularly on brand lifted search? A handful. Do you think that for companies, in terms of their search performance, that maybe they should be looking a little bit closer at what they're getting in terms of brand and correlating that search interest to brand growth?
Yeah, that's what we report. When we do branding and public relations, that's one of the key metrics we report is we hope to create an increase in branded search traffic. Because in many cases, it's not like a digital PR program where you can say, hey, can you put a link in there? You can't call the New York Times if they mention you and ask them to put in a link. They will block you and they'll never answer your email again. So it's a different deal there. But over time, it's going to lift branded search result. That if you're doing a good enough job with your visibility program. So we actually use in public relations programs, the main thing we look at in when we look at the analytics is the branded search.
Any other questions? All right, we've got one back there.
For those of us who don't have unbelievable connections with publication or there's live network of amazing folks, what are some tools or tips you can give to try and get some of this feedback?
Well, first I would tell you the relationships are not as big an advantage as you think, because I learned this because I'd been in journalism for 6 years before I started. And the first friend that I tried to pitch said, "You're trying to sell me something?" I better have a good story, right? And if it's a good story, it's going to sell whether they know you or not. And then once you've sold them one good story, they'll open your emails after that. So don't feel like, oh, it's all about relationships. It's typically about researching the report. So I would say like a big theme in this book is the importance of targeting and knowing your audience. Otherwise, the world is just too big and fragmented and you can't prioritize. But if you know your audience, you might identify that dozen reporters that really matter. Get to know them. It's not a media list of 200 people like people used to send out to, and I guess some still do. It's like in your space for your audience, who's most important. And start with, we all like personalization, right? Would you like Netflix as much if it didn't recommend movies to you? No one wants a blind pitch or a pitch that doesn't suggest, oh, I read your last story. In fact, I've read your last 10 stories. And I put these ideas together, and I was thinking about this. That's just going to be like, that's what reporters want more than anything. They often don't get that kind of feedback, that someone has actually read and cared about what they wrote, thought about that, and then suggested a story idea. And yes, it takes a hell of a lot more time than sending out a wire release. But you can send out a wire release for $1,000 or $2,000 to thousands of people and get no coverage beyond syndication of the press release. But if you work on half dozen, a dozen people in a sincere way, hopefully you're working in a space where you either have or can gain a true interest in it, then that's how the relationships develop. And they'll start to trust you to provide them good information, and you can become a source for them. But there's no shortcut to that. The only shortcut is not wasting your time doing it with the outlets and the publications and the people that don't matter as much to your brand or your client. You got to prioritize.
Great. We're at the top of the hour. If you have any other questions, you can ask Scott after the session. Let's give him a big round of applause. Scott Baradell. Thank you, Scott.
Man, I would love it if anyone reads the book. My email address is sbaradell@ideagrove.com, or I also have scott@trustsignals.com. Leave a message. I just love the feedback right now. It just came out last week, and I'm excited to talk about it. If you ever want just some free consulting advice on something, if you want to talk about trust signals, we can hop on the phone anytime and talk through stuff. I don't mind talking about maybe a client or company issue you're dealing with. I like looking at all that stuff through this filter, so I'm happy to do that anytime.
One quick question
Thanks.
for you, Scott.